Seguimos con más información. Teresita Aya, buenos días.
Juan Camilo, buenos días.
Bueno, un tema muy importante. En este momento vamos a tratar en Noticias Caracol en vivo. En la República Democrática del Congo, exactamente en la provincia de Ituri, arrancó un brote de ébola que hoy tiene muy preocupada a las autoridades de la Organización Mundial de la Salud y que ya afecta a países vecinos, inclusive como Uganda. Se trata de la cepa Bundibugyo, que es una variante del virus que es poco común, así lo han calificado las autoridades. Actualmente no cuenta con una vacuna aprobada, pero lo único cierto es que ya deja más de 1000 casos sospechosos y más de 220 muertes probables por ébola, precisamente allí en África. Ha declarado la emergencia la Organización Mundial y su director ha viajado en las últimas horas a África debido a esta preocupación. David Salgado, que ya lo vamos a ver, ha logrado contactar en las últimas horas y que nos hable aquí para Colombia, en exclusiva a un portavoz de la Organización Mundial de la Salud, al señor Christian Lindmeier. Teresita, saludemos al doctor Meyer.
Dr. Lindmeier, thank you so much for being with Caracol Noticias and accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much for having me on this important issue.
Arranquemos desde lo más elemental, si le parece, Teresita. ¿En qué consiste este brote de ébola? ¿Cómo lo podemos entender?
We'd like to start with a very basic question. What exactly is Ebola? What do we need to know about Ebola?
Thank you, and a very good point, actually. It belongs to the classes of viral hemorrhagic fever. So that means it's a virus, and hemorrhaging means it's bleeding. You're often bleeding from yourself, from your eyes, from your nose. And it's a fever as well. So it actually classifies it very well. The virus lives in the animal kingdom. That's why we see such outbreaks, either from Ebola, Bundibugyo, or the Ebola Zaire, or Marburg, which belongs in the same area, in the same class. We see this in almost the same bigger areas, in the tropical areas, where it comes from the wildlife. Very often from bats. Bats are either biting someone, or the bat's droppings are infecting something, or an animal which gets either bitten by the bat, then gets consumed by people, by humans. This is how it typically transmits. So it's a very simple transmission from animal kingdom into the human world. And then it's unfortunately highly contagious when you touch somebody. So with body fluids, not just skin. I mean, body fluids like sweat, vomit, anything else which develops from your body. And then it is because of, as a fever, people sweat, people transpire, people vomit, like in cholera, for example. And then this is contagious. So families, friends, doctors, medical staff who treat the body have to be extremely careful not to touch that body with the bare hands and then transmit it onto themselves. So this is why it's such a dangerous disease. It doesn't exist very often. We don't see it very often. But when it appears, it unfortunately has a fatality rate of up to 30 or up to 50% even. That means 1 in 2 people who have it could die. That's the maximum we've seen. And of course, all the treatment, all the care, all the science is behind to getting that number as low as possible.
Here, it's important, I think, to say that it's also contagious after the person, unfortunately, has died. And I'm guessing that's one of the main problems in Congo right now.
You're absolutely right. So a person who has died, who then will want it to be collected by their family members, for example, for a burial. Traditionally, the person is placed in an area, people come, say goodbye. Like in many other cultures, you kiss the person on the forehead or you touch them, and that is dangerous, if not even lethal. The problem here is to convince an entire community, an entire society, that you cannot do what you normally do with your loved ones once they just died. You cannot do that. You have to be very careful. You only one person can wash them, not the whole group, not the whole family. And you have to be, protected when you do that. So this is not what you typically do. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to convince the community to change their behavior in the face of such a dangerous virus.
Juan Camilo, dice que es, como su nombre lo indica, un virus que una vez se atrapa es muy contagioso, siempre y cuando sea por tocar a la otra persona, por líquidos, esa es la manera de contagiarse. Es un virus que es a la vez fiebre hemorrágica. Fiebre genera, como su nombre lo indica, altas temperaturas que pueden además afectar la hidratación de la persona. Hemorrágica es que la persona empieza a sangrarse por dentro. Todo esto es lo que pasa con el ébola. Una de cada dos personas que se contagia muere. Tiene una rata de mortalidad de cerca del 50%. Un virus muy interesante viene del reino animal, de los animales, en especial de los murciélagos. Cuando hay contacto con los murciélagos, bien sea porque el murciélago lo muerde a la persona o los desechos de las heces del murciélago entran en contacto con un ser humano o en el caso de ingerir a los murciélagos. Esto es una manera de transmisión muy común en el África y esto es parte de los problemas que han visto. Ahora, el problema es tocar a la persona. Como él decía, se transmite por cuenta de los fluidos de la persona y sobre todo, le pregunté yo, porque he estado leyendo sobre el tema, Juan Camilo, los muertos. ¿Qué pasa cuando una persona fallece? Y me dice, efectivamente, uno de los problemas que han tenido en el Congo es los rituales de la muerte de la persona. Como en muchos lugares del mundo uno quiere despedirse del ser querido, darle un beso de despedida, tocarle la mano y decirle buen viaje. Eso ha generado que sea mucho más alta la transmisión, porque es importante decir, el virus no muere cuando la persona muere.
David, usted tiene pregunta para su invitado hasta ahora.
Sí, Juan Camilo, Teresita, preguntémosle al señor Linnmeier, ¿cuáles son esas complicaciones que han tenido en territorio en la República Democrática del Congo? Porque no solo se habla de un tema cultural, como usted bien ya lo decía, sino también se han presentado quemas de instalaciones médicas en esos lugares.
What are the difficulties that WHO has experienced in Congo? We're talking about not only the medical issues, but the lack of infrastructure, the burning of tents and hospitals. What is the conflict inside of Congo? People, what are the local problems that WHO has encountered in order to battle the epidemic?
You're pointing at a very important topic here. It's a cocktail of problems or of issues, of challenges which the authorities are facing there. First of all, it's in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo, an area rich of minerals, a lot of mining activities. That's one thing. So a lot of international movements and national movements back and forth. A lot of, unfortunately, or basically gang activity, civil war going on with rebel activities, fighting, bombs being used. That means some areas cannot be accessed. Other areas people are fleeing from or fleeing to. Cross-border movements because of this, sometimes uncontrolled because of the war activities. Then you have very difficult to access areas. Some areas can be accessed by car, yes. Others only by bicycle or bike, motorbike, and the last only by foot. So it's a long distance. The distance to the capital, Kinshasa, is 1,700 kilometers by air. 2,900, nearly 3,000 kilometers by land. This means it takes a lot of time to get equipment, personnel, supplies to this area. So this is the one aspect. So the high distrust of the people in anything official, in any authorities, because of the war, because of the activities on the ground. This is, together with the cultural aspects we just talked about in terms of the burials, this is when people don't trust authorities when they say you can't have your friend, your family member right now out of hospital because it's dangerous. They say, no, we want our friend, our loved one, and they go take them forcefully. This is how 2 or 3 tents from one of our partner organizations got burned. This is how violence erupts and medical staff are afraid. And of course, fear for their life sometimes. So it's a very dangerous cocktail. which everybody is facing, which the authorities are facing. Yet, if we as an international community join hands with Congo here, this can be beaten. We had Ebola outbreaks there before, I think about 17. This can be beaten.
David, muy interesante. Dice que acá hay todo un cóctel de temas, numerosos temas que afectan el hecho de que se pueda tratar la epidemia de una manera más eficaz. Dice que esto es en una zona al noreste del país donde hay mucha minería y la minería además implica que llegue gente de otros países a trabajar buscando riqueza. Hay traspasos entre las fronteras que no es fácil de controlar muchas veces y una zona también muy violenta donde operan numerosas pandillas que tratan de buscar riqueza. Entonces la zona es violenta, es conflictiva, esto afecta a los médicos, están por tierra a cerca de 3.000 kilómetros de la capital, lo que dificulta el ingreso de personal médico, de medicinas, y estamos hablando de una zona a la que se puede llegar por carro hasta cierto punto. Después toca en moto, bicicleta o a pie. Es decir, nuevamente, llevar los insumos médicos ha sido supremamente complicado. No hay un acceso fácil y a esto se le suma un último ingrediente, que es la desconfianza en las autoridades. Entonces, cuando las autoridades le dicen no toquen el cuerpo, no se puede hacer esto, lávese las manos, hay una desconfianza tan grande en el país que dicen, ¿sabe qué? A usted no le vamos a creer y hacemos lo que nosotros creemos que está correcto. Y eso ha hecho que la epidemia sea peor de lo que debía ser. Y es la epidemia, dijo, número 17. Se han controlado las otras, se puede controlar, pero hay muchos retos.
Sobre ese control, Teresita, preguntémosle lo que la gente que nos está viendo se puede preguntar, y es ¿qué tan fácil puede ser la propagación por el mundo del ébola? ¿Qué tanto los otros países deben estar preocupados o no?
We have people writing to us from all over the place, and they want to know how should we be worried about Ebola leaving Congo and starting to propagate all over the world? Should we be concerned about a world epidemic of Ebola?
An important question and very understandable because we all have COVID still in our memory and we all suffered from it. No, it's different. Ebola is different. The emergency committee, a meeting of scientists from around the world to evaluate this situation, have designated that the risk for the national level, so within DRC, is very high. On the regional level, in the regional wider area around DRC, high. But on the international level, it's low. They also said you gave recommendations for countries what to do. First of all, any person that feels sick, feels symptoms, or of course is sick, should not travel. In no way, not on airports, not on boats, not by foot, nothing. Go to a health clinic and that's it. Present yourself to authorities. Second, airport screenings, exit screenings, absolutely useful. So check at airports when people are traveling, take the temperature, what we know from other outbreaks, because again, one of the early symptoms is high temperature. So all these screenings can be done, or checking where that person was in the recent days, if they were in that specific area, if there's a temperature, yes, if there's, exit screenings. But apart from that, we may see individual cases, but we know what to do about Ebola. We know what to do, how to give care. Important though, and that's not unimportant. This virus does not yet have a vaccine. This virus does not yet have a specific treatment. Scientists are working on it, but this will take time. This will take half a year, 6 months, 5 months, longer, up to a year. So this is not what we can use right now. Right now, we need to use our common sense, the care for the people with traditional means of caring for them, supportive care, early detection, surveillance, very important, finding cases early. The earlier you find somebody, the less likely they are to die. So that's very important. And then again, exchanging information globally, working together, and transporting material and necessary equipment to and from the areas which need it.
That leads me to another question. You said this is the epidemic number 17, I guess, of Ebola. How were the other ones stopped? How did they come to an end?
Yeah, good point. Remember, we talked about that it lives in the animal world. And finding the first case who was infected is really difficult, especially as this is already a few weeks ago when that happened. It could happen in various ways, as we just said before. But in the animal world, there are many diseases and viruses which live there. And the closer we get as humans into the world of the animals, meaning in a jungle, we cut down the forest for mining activities, for trade, for hunting. We go in there. Then we get into the rain where animals and humans meet and cross over. So it's very unlikely that we will ever defeat that origin of the virus. What is, though, very likely that we will also find the vaccine for this one. Remember, we do have a vaccine for Ebola Zaire, which is extremely helpful and was very well used by the Congolese authorities in earlier outbreaks. Just for this outbreak, it doesn't work. We need to develop a new one. And we're pretty positive that this will be developed. There are 3 candidate vaccines already. So science will get us further. Surveillance and community work will help us to stop the current outbreak. But will we beat the animal kingdom? I don't think so.
Juan Camilo dice que lo más importante es entender que esto no es una epidemia global como lo pudo haber sido el COVID-19. Y sí, todos tenemos todavía en nuestra memoria esa pandemia de hace tan solo 6 años y por eso existe mucho susto. Pero no, en este caso, dice él, el riesgo de una epidemia grande está interno en Congo. En algunos países vecinos del Congo se puede hablar de un riesgo medianamente alto, pero más allá de eso, el riesgo es mínimo. ¿Cómo evitar que se siga propagando? Prevención y detectarlo tempranamente. ¿Cómo? Si uno tiene algún síntoma, recordemos, fiebre o deshidratación o empieza a sentir que está sangrando o algo, no viajar, pero no solo no viajar en avión, ni en carro, ni en tren, ni en bicicleta, ni a pie, no moverse, ir a la clínica más cercana y que le hagan los test. 2, en los aeropuertos, en las estaciones de tren, que haya aparatos que le midan a uno la temperatura, porque recordemos que es fiebre hemorrágica. La temperatura alta es uno de los primeros síntomas del ébola. Entonces, si le detectan la temperatura alta, pues pueden empezar a controlar y evitar la propagación. Eso no quiere decir que no se empiecen a detectar uno que otro caso fuera de la región, pero él dice que estos van a ser esporádicos. A la pregunta de cómo se hizo en el pasado para contener las epidemias, si vamos en la número 17, dice, es muy difícil si no hacemos la detección temprana. En el pasado había vacunas para esta tipo de ébola, no hay. Hay 3 tipos de vacunas distintas para otros tipos. Se va a desarrollar una para esta, pero en el pasado las vacunas sirvieron. Y de nuevo, evitar el contacto con los animales, con los murciélagos. A medida que el ser humano entra más en la selva y entra más en contacto con los animales, esto pues se va a seguir propagando. Entonces, hacia un futuro, evitar esto y esperar que las vacunas, como en el pasado, se desarrollen y nos sirvan.
David.
Sí, Teresita, sobre ese tema de las vacunas, ya ayer la Unión Africana aseguró que para finales del 2026 ya tendría una vacuna. Preguntarle al señor Lindmeier si ellos tienen conocimiento de esa propuesta y cómo se trabaja con esos candidatos a vacunas, sobre todo para este brote que no hay.
The African Union yesterday said that by the end of this year we will have a vaccine for this type of Ebola, this strand of Ebola. Are we that close? And how is WHO working with the African Union and other organizations inside in order to promote the vaccine and promote the eradication of Ebola?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing is to develop the vaccine, and I think we're pretty advanced there because there were technical advisory groups meeting, the specific term, technical advisory group of experts who dedicated which of the vaccines is the most promising one, and they advanced 3. So the statement you just quoted seems correct. 3 to 6 months, so by the end of the year we should have a vaccine. But number 2, a vaccine is not useful unless you get it to the people who need it. And here you're absolutely right. It needs the whole community, the families, the villages, maybe even cities, depending where we need to go, need to be convinced that this is helpful and is helping them and is something good for them. So community work to convince everyone that this is actually for their benefit is just as important as the vaccine development. Without that, without trust in science, without trust in a vaccine, without trust in a medicine, it's just water and it's not useful.
Dice que sí, David, que las vacunas están muy cerca de ser efectivas para este tipo de ébola y que aquí a 3, 6 máximo final de este año sí pueden tener una vacuna. Pero dicho eso, dice que es tan importante desarrollar la vacuna como que le llegue a la gente que la necesite. Ya hablamos de lo difícil y lo lejos que están estas regiones de la capital del Congo, pero además de eso, y hablábamos antes de la falta de confianza en las autoridades, es necesario trabajar en comunidad con diferentes organizaciones locales y regionales para que la gente acepte ponerse la vacuna y entienda que sí es algo que les va a beneficiar y no es algo que les estén imponiendo. Y eso es un trabajo que va de la mano con el desarrollo de la vacuna.
Teresita, República Democrática del Congo va a ser un rival de Colombia en el Mundial. ¿Él ve algún tipo de riesgo o qué precauciones también se deberían tomar con la ida de esta selección del Congo al Mundial 2026? ¿Él ve impedimento para que esto se haga?
Colombia will face Congo in the Soccer World Cup. Is one of its rivals. What preventive measures should the team take or the fans take in order to not get Ebola in the World Soccer Cup?
Yeah, good point. So what I read just recently is that the team, the Congolese team, is already starting to take measures. That means whatever they did in agreement with FIFA, how to isolate themselves, and go in quarantine now for a while to see if anybody develops symptoms, so that by the end of the quarantine they're ready to go and ready to play. And that's important. And that should be the most important part. And for everybody personally traveling, what we said before, the exit screenings at the airport, temperature measuring, looking at your history of your travel history, and that goes a far way. And if you are feeling sick, don't travel, don't go anywhere. Even if the heat of a football game gets you excited and you sweat, that should not be dangerous. You should not have, you should just simply look for symptoms. And good luck for your games.
Thank you. Dice que el equipo de Congo, ya de acuerdo a conversaciones con la FIFA, precisamente, está aislado y en una cuarentena, al final de la cual mirarán si alguien desarrolla unos síntomas antes de dejarlos jugar o viajar a Estados Unidos. Aquí, Juan Camilo, les cuento que Canadá, por ejemplo, ya le prohibió la entrada a los de Congo para la Copa del Mundo. Entonces, ¿y qué dijo para los fans? Para los fans dijo que, pues, si se sienten enfermos, si sienten algún malestar, por más de que les encante el fútbol, tengan boletas, no viajen. Claro. Quédense en su país. Hay que ver si eso se va a dar, y además nos deseó mucha suerte con los partidos en la Copa del Mundo.
Es un tema de autocontrol. David.
Sí. El director de la OMS, Tedros Adhanom, ya está en la República Democrática del Congo. ¿Qué va a hacer allá? ¿Cuál va a ser su agenda?
WHO director is already in Congo and has arrived in Congo. What is his agenda in that country?
Yeah, as Director General of the World Health Organization, he of course has all the official meetings, and he's having today and tomorrow meetings in the DRC in Kinshasa with local authorities, with the national authorities, of course, with local partners, with other UN agencies, to discuss how to best support from WHO side the national authorities in their fight against Ebola. Let's not forget, it is a fight by the national authorities. It's Congo battling this Ebola virus, and we all, as an international community, can offer our help.
Dice que como director general de la Organización Mundial de la Salud va a tener múltiples reuniones con los locales, con las personas que están en la primera línea de esta guerra contra el ébola, pero que no hay que olvidar que la guerra la está dando Congo. Lo que hace la Organización Mundial de la Salud es ver cómo puede apoyar y cómo puede ayudar para evitar que esto se expanda.
Teresita, yo quiero preguntarle qué probabilidad hay en el tema de detección y rastreo que aquí haya un brote oculto, es decir, que aquí haya el número de cifra de infectados y de personas muertas por ébola sea mayor.
This question has to do with the people who reportedly have Ebola in Congo. Are there any hidden numbers or people who have not come to the authorities to say, I am sick, I have Ebola, and that would mean the numbers are higher than the ones we know?
We should assume that actually even. Right now we have reported, let me look at the figures, the latest 125 confirmed cases with 17 confirmed deaths. That includes 13 healthcare workers, which is high, 16 healthcare workers actually. So again, 125 cases confirmed. That sounds little. But about 1,000, just under 1,000 suspected. And that's the numbers we have to look at. Because what does suspected means? Suspected means somebody with fever, with sweating, with suspicious symptoms presents themselves to a health facility. And then they get checked. Then ideally their blood gets taken and the samples get taken and get sent to a laboratory. Now, laboratory testing is still a huge challenge. Remember, we talked about 1,700 kilometers by air to Kinshasa. Lab facilities in the northeast of Congo have yet to be rebuilt. There were lab facilities, but they are not existing anymore for that specific kind, so that needs to be installed. WHO is helping here. We need to transport material up. We need to set up laboratories to make testing very quick and very speedy on the site, not having to transport for long. So, but let's look at again at the suspected cases. And we also have 223 suspected deaths. And remember, we only have about 17 confirmed deaths. And suspected deaths are people we cannot even reach anymore, whether we hear about in villages, where they're buried already, so you can't take a sample anymore. So these deaths we have to take seriously. But again, if we have high numbers of suspected cases, that is not necessarily bad, because it does mean that people go for health facilities with symptoms to get checked. And maybe it's malaria, maybe it's cholera, maybe it's something else. Maybe they're in a very good sense excited about their football team, but that's unfortunately only a wish normally. Or whether maybe it's a serious disease like Ebola. So that's good. Go to the health facilities and get checked. Do we suspect this is much more? Yes. We actually think we're at the beginning of it, not at the end of it. Let's not forget. This started weeks before it was actually detected what it is. People have been traveling. So yes, we will see more cases. We will see more suspected cases. We will unfortunately have to expect more deaths. But again, the more we bring surveillance and testing and care to those people, the quicker we get this under control.
Juan Camilo, efectivamente, me dice que cifras oficiales dan solamente 25 casos en todo el Congo y 17 muertes confirmadas por ébola, pero se sospecha que casos ocultos pueden llegar a más de 1,000, más de 223 muertes y muy contagioso. El problema es que, como decía antes, es una zona alejada, la gente no va a hacerse los test, no hay muchos laboratorios en esta zona donde se pueda confirmar que lo que tiene la persona es ébola y no malaria o cólera o cualquier otra enfermedad. Entonces la gente no hace los test, no van, piensan que están simplemente enfermos por otra razón y puede haber muchos más casos. Estamos al inicio de la epidemia, no al final.
Teresita, pues agradézcale esta interesante charla desde Ginebra, en Suiza. Se conecta con nosotros un portavoz de la OMS, el doctor Christian Lindmeier. Agradézcale por estos minutos para Noticias Caracol en Colombia.
Dr. Lindmeier, thank you very much for your time, your explanations and telling us about Ebola. Thank you very much.
Mucho gusto y muchas gracias por la traducción. Muy
You're welcome.
Gracias al doctor Lindmeier. Teresita, muchas gracias.
Con mucho gusto, Juan Camilo.
11:16. David, muchas gracias.
Usted, Juan Camilo, muchas gracias.